This lesson is going to cover the water cycle. The water cycle is also known as the hydrologic cycle. And remember, when you spell hydrologic cycle, it's Hydrologic. And if you look at this first part of the word, hydro is the prefix, and hydro equals water. Now, I think the best way for us to look at the hydrologic cycle is to start with a diagram. And so I'm going to draw real quickly just a little hill and valley like this. Okay, so I've got a hill and I've got a valley, and in that valley we're going to collect some water. This is where water is going to be standing. So I'll kind of put in a couple of waves to represent water. Now, on the hill, let's go ahead and we'll put in some trees maybe. And so I'll draw a tree starting right here. It's not going to be great, but you get the idea, right? So we've got a tree coming in right there. I'll put another tree right here. We're going to need these guys later when we talk about something. Okay, now the first thing that I want to talk about is when water moves from a liquid state to a gas state. Now, the reason it would move from a liquid state to a gas state is because of this right here, right? The old sun. Let me put some rays around the sun. The sun is the energy that drives this cycle. And if there is enough energy from the sun being absorbed by water, it will change from a liquid state to a gas state. And so I'm going to kind of put some arrows going up, right? Another arrow going up. And this here represents evaporation. Now, as the water evaporates, it tends to start collecting around particles in the atmosphere, maybe dust particles, and it will start to condense. And when it condenses, it often condenses into the form of clouds. So we'll get a light gray and we'll put a cloud right here. All right, and so we've got our cloud there. Now, remember, when it condenses, that is called condensation. Now, we'll move a little bit further along in the cycle, and I'm going to have this cloud kind of move inland. And so I'm going to draw an arrow that way. And a lot of times when it's over land and when it's over the ocean too, it really doesn't matter. You'll have clouds that will really start forming, and you'll see some really kind of dark clouds. And let's see if we can get this to fill in to kind of give us a little bit more of an idea of this dark storm cloud, right? And so those storm clouds, usually we think about those storm clouds as rain clouds. And so I'm going to put in a little bit of rain falling from this cloud, and maybe it's going to fall in the form of rain, but precipitation could also fall in the form of snow and sleet and just any kind of water that was falling out of the sky. And like I said, this point of the water cycle would be called precipitation. Now, when that water hits the ground, and I've got some water that's hitting the ground, some of that water is going to just go straight off the side. And then some of that water is actually going to go into the ground, right? It's actually going to like seep in between all of the crevices and the cracks, and it's going to actually fill up voids or empty spaces in the ground. Now, when it just moves along the surface of the ground, that is called runoff. And so this arrow here represents runoff. Now when it goes into the ground, that represents percolation. Percolation is when water moves from the surface and goes into the ground. Now percolation is very important because in the ground you actually have water that will collect. Oh, let me redo that. Don't want that red there. Represent this with blue, so we'll have some water. But you actually have water that will collect underground. Okay? And we usually refer to this area underground as an aquifer or groundwater. Remember, besides the sun making all of this cycle making this cycle go, is you also have gravity, because gravity is what's bringing precipitation back to the earth. Gravity is what's moving water along the surface as runoff. Gravity is what's pulling water through the ground as it percolates through to the groundwater or the aquifer. Now, there's one more term that I want to talk about before we wrap up, and I saved it for the last because it's kind of a unique term. It's a little bit different. But I'm going to select another color, and let's look at this. How about a light green? There's also an evaporation that takes place from the surface of plants' leaves, and that evaporation is known as transpiration. So lots of ations, right? We've got evaporation, we've got condensation, we've got precipitation, we've got percolation, and we've got transpiration.